My name is John. I'm 73, living alone in an old duplex on the far west side of town. Some people say I'm too hot-tempered, others say I'm too cautious. They're both right. I rush forward, then hesitate, I pause, then suddenly run. When I was young, that contradiction tripped me up. Now, in old age, it's the very thing that keeps my heart steady. Before leaving the house, I always do the same ritual. At the front door, I press the lock once, twice, 3 times. The first time, my hand trembles. The second time, my breath evens out. The third time, my chest tightens. Only then do I whisper, "All right, let's go," and step down the stairs. There's an elevator in the building, sure, but I trust the stairs more. Buttons can fail you. Stairs never lie, they're honest, one step at a time. My mornings begin with a radio. That old AM crackle fills the kitchen. When the DJ plays some new singer's track, I don't care much for the lyrics. I listen to the rhythm, the accents. I think, so that's the beat that gives people comfort nowadays. I keep a pitcher of iced tea ready from the night before. Warm tea soothes the stomach, but cool tea calms the heart. By the window, there's an old plant. I don't even know its name. Its leaves turn whichever way I angle the sunlight. People are the same. You lean your heart one way, and your whole day bends in that direction. I wasn't always alone. I used to be a market man. Started out delivering coal, then ran a fruit stand, and by the end I was packing goods in a warehouse. My hands wore down from those years. People say your fingerprints prove who you are, but mine are faint. I used to joke, guess I could never commit a crime. Back then I had a friend, David. Same block, same playground, same factory job, same cheap beer at the corner bar. The night before I left for the army, we sat together at a diner. No fried chicken back then, just chili fries on the table, greasy and hot. "Hey, John," David said. "When we get back, let's live like real men, all right?" "Yeah," I answered. "Real men." We clinked our glasses. It sounded like the glass might shatter. We laughed. The next morning, life tore us apart. I went to the army. By the time I came back, David was gone. "Where'd he go?" I asked around. People just shrugged. No idea. One day, that whole family just disappeared. That was it. No explanation. His name stayed in my old address book, but the man himself was gone. I've been staring into that empty space for over 50 years. That morning, the radio was giving traffic updates. Which bridge, which lane, how many miles an hour? I wasn't listening to the traffic, I was listening to my heart stutter. Then my phone rang. A local number starting with 312. For some reason, I thought of hospitals. My son Michael works boats down in Florida. My daughter Susan lives out in Virginia. Neither calls me often. I guess in their minds, calling an old father too much isn't a sign of love, it's a sign of worry. My fingers went cold as I pressed the answer button. "John, is that you?" The voice was hoarse, rolling across the floor like a tired breath. I straightened up in my chair. The world tilted, then steadied. I knew that voice. Even buried under age, memory doesn't lose its shape. The bones of it were still there. And those bones called my name. David, silence. Just for a moment. But for me, it stretched. Then a low but clear reply, "Yeah, it's me." My right hand knocked over my glass of iced tea. The lukewarm water spread across the table. I didn't even wipe it up. I just gripped the phone tighter. "Where are you?" "The market. That corner spot. You remember, near the old metal bench where we used to eat chili fries? I'm there." Sunlight hit the window, brushing across the leaves of my plant. I didn't touch them. I just stood up. While lacing my shoes, a flood of old words tangled in my head. Why now? Where were you? Were you alive? Why didn't I know? If not you, then who? The more questions I had, the faster my steps became. I didn't take the elevator. I trusted the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps, breath getting shorter. By the time I opened the door, the smell of the farmer's market swept over me. Oil, plastic bags, fresh fish, onions, people. Above all, people. People have a smell you can't mistake. The entrance looked different now. Franchise signs, identical light fixtures, neatly carved lettering. Once the market was messy, wild. Now it was tidy. But tidy often means boring. I kept walking. Toward the corner. The old spot was still there. A faded awning. A paint-chipped pole. The metal bench that chilled your legs when you sat too long. And on that bench, an old man sat. White hair. Deep wrinkles. Dry lips. But the eyes, that was the problem. His eyes were the same. Time can tear a face apart, but it can't tear out the fire inside the eyes. John. He called me first. The moment he said my name, I lost my age. For a second, I was a boy again, standing at the edge of the schoolyard. David. We didn't rush to stand. We didn't rush to hug. Old men greet quietly. Quiet greetings last longer. I sat down across from him. He looked at me, blinking slowly twice. That's what happy people do. Or nervous people, you're alive. My words came out clumsy. 50 years of waiting, and all I managed was that. I was alive. Just alive. He smiled. For a moment. Then his smile faded. Feet passed by beneath the bench. A woman's heels, a student's sneakers, a delivery guy's sandals. The world brushed against our shoes, unaware. Why now, I asked. The first question is always short. Short questions bring long answers. David pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. The edges were yellowed, the creases deep. This is your address. I wrote it down when we were 20. Never threw it away. Even when I moved, even when I changed jobs, even when I left town. This paper stayed with me. This morning I held it again. And I called. I didn't take the paper, just looked at it. That address doesn't exist anymore. If I held it, I'd only feel the emptiness of a place long gone. John, he said again. My name cracked in his throat. Time's not as long as we think. The air shifted. I stretched my fingers once, then closed them again. The yellow paper. The broken voice. His words. I held back the urge to understand everything at once. You hungry? I asked. Think they still got chili fries? David shrugged. That lady's gone. The spot's a coffee shop now. A cup of coffee costs more than 2 plates of fries. Then let's get 2 cups. We stood up and headed inside. The coffee shop was bright. Too bright for old faces like ours. Light spilled across the tables in a way that made wrinkles sharper and eyes heavier. The barista set 2 cups down with a practiced smile, and I glanced at the wall. Old photographs hung there, black and white shots of the market long ago. Canvas tents, plastic tubs, steam rising from soup. In one picture, 2 young men stood in the corner, blurry but laughing. They looked almost like us. Photographs never grow old. That's why they can feel cruel. David wrapped both hands around his cup. People who hold cups with both hands are usually cold. Or lonely. John, he said, voice low. Yeah. That night I ran. I let the words hang in the air. So it seems. My brother's business went under. Men showed up at the house, voices scarier than the cops, pounding on the door. I thought if I left before the army took me, maybe they wouldn't go after my family. Turns out, it's easier than you'd think to disappear. Change your name, speak less, keep your head down, you can slide into any place like a bead on a string. And I did. For 50 years. 50 years? 50 years. They went by like a single day. When every day looks the same, wake up, work, eat, sleep time doesn't stretch, it folds. I stared at my coffee. It was cooling, but coffee doesn't really make a sound when it cools. Only your lips get careful. So why now? My question was short again. Short questions dig deeper. David lifted his head. His eyes carried both the yesterday I knew and the today I didn't. Because I always thought you were still out there. Unlike everything else that vanished, you remained. And that kept me going. But here's the strange part. Even knowing you existed, I was lonely. So today I called. Before it's too late. Too late? He nodded. Yeah. Too late? He didn't say more. Old men know if you spill everything at once, you spell the ending too soon. Endings should be saved for the very end. We left our coffee half-finished and stepped back out into the market. Sunlight had tilted by then, glinting off the stalls. A fruit seller folded up his awning, high schoolers argued over the price of oranges, and a woman laughed as she tossed in an extra apple. I liked that word extra. It made me wonder if life had extras too. John, David said. Yeah. You still live on that hill? The hill's the same. The house changed a little. Got indoor plumbing now. We walked together. Not far, just a few blocks, a flight of steps, one narrow hill. David hadn't forgotten how to pace himself. 1 step, then 3, then 5. Old men walk to rhythm. Lose the rhythm and you fall. Keep it and you live. We sat on a low bench near my building. Low benches are honest, they hurt your back, and honesty hurts too. I pulled a small notebook from my pocket. The paper was worn, filled with dates and weather notes. Beneath the latest entry, I scribbled David. Market. Coffee. Paper. Not too late. He chuckled. You still write things down. Makes me feel alive. I stopped writing. Thought if I wrote anything, someone might find me. Find you? Who? He didn't answer. And I didn't push. Questions need timing. Ask too early, and even a question can feel like violence. The sun dropped lower. A stray cat brushed under the bench, tail long and worn like a survivor's banner. John. Yeah. You still think about that corner at night? Sometimes. There's always somebody sitting there, And when I see them, I feel like I'm sitting there too. People see others sitting, and they remember their own seat. I sat too. Where? Too many places. Funny thing is, sitting always felt like running. I thought standing meant strength. Turns out sometimes sitting is hiding. His words drifted off. I looked at his shoulders. Shoulders tell more truth than faces. His were narrow now, worn thin by either too much responsibility or too much running from it. Maybe both. Somewhere down the block a doorbell rang. These days, buzzers and text alerts slice up the day. Back then, it was shadows and church bells. Different slices, same day. The sun rises, the sun sets. Let's go in, I said. You sure I can? He asked. Why ask? Do I deserve to cross your threshold? That question carried 50 years inside it. A threshold doesn't judge. It just sits there, waiting to be stepped over. We climbed the stairs. At the door, I wiped dust from the bell with my thumb. A useless habit, but useless habits kept me alive. I opened the door. The place was small, and it smelled of me soap, old wood, iced tea. David slipped his shoes off politely, as if he'd never forgotten how. We sat at the table with 2 cups of tea. He held his in both hands. I cracked the window. Outside, faint sounds filtered in, kids laughing, a motorcycle, a TV commercial. Between it all, I heard David's breath. Breathing isn't resting. It's proof. John. Yeah. Can we stop here for today? In my ear, it sounded like paper folding. Folding a page. Folding a story. Yeah. Today's enough. He stood. I didn't. As he walked to the door, he said slowly, tomorrow. Same time. Back at the corner. I nodded, folding my heart like paper, tucking it into my pocket for tomorrow. The door closed. I stayed in my chair a long while. Time isn't measured by clocks, but by the chest. A wide chest makes time long, a narrow chest makes it short. Tonight mine was wide. I opened my notebook again. Tomorrow. Mark it. David. Not too late. My pen shook a little. Shaking isn't bad. Shaking means you're still alive. The next day, I left the house earlier than usual. The market was still waking up, crates opening, apples catching the morning light, onions stacked like soldiers waiting for orders. The corner bench sat in its same place. Benches don't move, only the people who sit on them change. David wasn't there yet. I didn't sit down either. Waiting has its manners. If you promise to sit together, you don't take the seat first. Instead, I tapped the pole of the awning with my finger. The metal made no sound. Maybe it was dumb. But dumb things can also be kind. John. His voice came from behind me. I didn't turn right away. Turning felt like it might collapse the 50 years all at once. I only tilted my head. He was standing there, breathing heavier than yesterday, but his eyes, they were brighter. Brighter than I remembered. Brighter than I deserved. Let's sit, he said. We sat. Same bench. Same angle. Same silence. Sometimes sameness is the only thing that saves you. John. Yeah. There's something I didn't say yesterday. I took a breath. Breathing is preparation. You breathe first so the words can enter. The truth is, I didn't just leave because of the debts. That sentence bent the air. Even the sound of oil frying nearby seemed to pause. Maybe it was my ears. I placed my hands on my knees, watched the veins rise under the skin. Raised veins don't mean fear. They mean readiness. Old truths demand readiness. What do you mean? I asked, my voice small. Small voices are for long answers. He didn't speak for a while. Silence can be as long as speech. Like a man catching his breath after a long walk, or a man choosing words after a long silence. He wet his lips and looked at me. John, back then there was someone I had to protect. I blinked. Who? He shook his head slowly. Not today. I'll tell you piece by piece. Even if you curse me, I'll tell you one letter at a time. Starting tomorrow. Oddly, that comforted me. Stories told all at once die. Stories told slowly live. Living stories come back the next day. All right, I said. Tomorrow. He nodded. The sun brushed the back of his neck. On an old man's neck, sunlight looks a lot like the glow on a child's forehead. The beginning and the end of life, they resemble each other. We stayed there a long time. People flowed past us like water vendors calling, teenagers laughing, a woman selling grapes yelling out her discount. At our age, we were both many people's sir, many people's customer, but fewer people's name. Names shrink as years grow. That's when I noticed him. Across the street, inside the coffee shop window, sat a man in a black hat. His coffee was untouched, cooling in front of him. His eyes weren't on the cup. They were on us. I pretended not to see, but I did. Old men learn that trick. David saw him too. His voice dropped low. John, today's enough. That was his signal. We stood, moving toward the edge of the market. As we passed the cafe, I glanced sideways. The man in the black hat avoided my eyes. Avoidance is usually the surest sign you've been seen. I didn't say a word. I only wrote in my head, black hat. Window. Cup. Tomorrow. David tapped the awning pole once as he left. I walked the other way. That's how old men part two directions from one corner. If someone follows, at least one of you gets away. Survival is sometimes simple math. Back home, I pressed the lock once, twice, 3 times. Then opened my notebook today. David, not just debts. Someone, black hat. Tomorrow. The radio played faintly. A DJ read a listener's message. I've been waiting for a phone call for a long time. I turned the volume up just a little. A cat meowed outside. Low sounds last longer. I closed my eyes. Behind my eyelids, the shadow of the awning stretched wide. Tomorrow was already sitting on that bench, waiting for me. The next morning, I left before the sun fully rose. The bench was damp with dew. I pressed my palm against the metal and felt the cold climb into my skin. I didn't move it. Sometimes you need the cold to remind you you're alive. David arrived slower this time. His breath was heavy, but his eyes carried the same stubborn light. He sat down and leaned back, staring at the sky as though he was looking for words there. John, he said, I told you I'd say it one piece at a time. You can be angry. You can walk away, but I can't hide it anymore. I steadied my breath. Go on. There was a child, he whispered. I froze. A child? Yes. A little girl. She had no one. Her parents died in an accident near the factory and she had nowhere to go. If I left for the army, she would have been swallowed by the streets. So I took her. I disappeared with her. My voice cracked. For 50 years? He nodded. I raised her in shadows. Moved from town to town, never staying long. Always looking over my shoulder. I thought if I stayed gone, she might stay safe. My chest tightened. Who was she, David? Who was that child? He looked at me then, straight and unflinching, though his lips trembled. John, she was your blood. The words slammed into me. What do you mean? Your sister? The one who left home all those years ago? She had a daughter. The girl was hers. And that made her yours too. I couldn't speak. My knees pressed against the ground, the veins in my hands rising like ropes. My sister's child. My niece. All this time. David's voice cracked again. I couldn't tell you. I thought if you knew it would break your life apart. I thought I was protecting you too. My throat burned. You let me mourn you for 50 years when you were raising my family. His eyes watered. I was wrong. Every year, every mile, I thought I was doing right. But I was wrong. Before I could answer, a shadow fell over us. The man in the black hat was standing there, closer than ever. His coffee was gone. His stare was not. So you finally said it, he murmured, voice sharp as a knife. The child. The truth. David stiffened. His hand trembled on his knee. John, this is the man I feared would come one day. I rose halfway from the bench. Who the hell are you? The man tilted his head, lips curling. Doesn't matter who I am. What matters is that girl. That girl was never yours to keep. My stomach dropped. What girl? Where is she now? David's breath shook. Her name is Grace. She grew up. She lives not far from here. The man in the black hat smiled, slow and cruel. Exactly, Grace. That girl has been mine to claim for decades. I clenched my fists. She's not yours. She's family. David's voice was ragged. I protected her every day of my life. I won't stop now. The man's eyes darkened. Truth doesn't stay hidden forever. You both will see. He stepped back, then turned, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. I looked at David. His shoulders shook with the weight of everything. John, he whispered, come with me tomorrow. I'll show you. I'll show you, Grace. You'll see for yourself what all these years were for. I pressed my hands against the bench, steadying myself. My heart beat like a drum in my ears. Tomorrow, then. That night, I didn't sleep. My pen scratched the page again and again. Grace. Niece. Black hat. Tomorrow. The following day, I walked to the market with no appetite, no patience. My hands trembled in my pockets. When I reached the corner, David was already there. His face looked pale, thinner than the day before, but his eyes carried a kind of certainty I hadn't seen in him since we were boys. John, he said, today's the day. I'll take you to her. We walked out of the market, down a narrow street lined with houses sagging under years. At the end of the lane, in front of a worn-down porch, a woman stood. Aged about 50. Her hair was streaked with grey, but her eyes were unmistakable. I knew those eyes. They were my sisters. David stopped. His voice broke. John, this is Grace. My throat locked. Grace lowered her head, her voice small, trembling. Uncle! That one word undid me. My knees weakened, and I nearly collapsed onto the porch steps. I reached for her hand. It was rough, hardened from work, but the warmth pulsed steady. Family warmth? How is this possible? I whispered. Before anyone could answer, a shadow fell across the porch. The man in the black hat stepped out from the alley. His voice sliced through the air. So here we are, all together. Took 50 years, but truth always finds its way. I spun on him. What do you want? Why follow us? He didn't look at me. His eyes fixed on Grace. She doesn't belong with you. She never did. She was promised. Promised to me. Her blood carries a debt. Grace shook her head, tears brimming. I'm not a debt. I'm not a promise. I'm a person. Her voice cracked like lightning across the porch. Even the black hat man paused. I put my arm around her shoulders. She's right. She's nobody's property. She's her own. David stumbled forward, his whole body trembling. I've kept her safe all these years. You'll never touch her. Not while I'm breathing. The man smirked. And how much longer will that be? David coughed, his body folding in on itself, but his voice rose anyway. Long enough to make sure she knows the truth. Long enough to stand between her and you. The man's smirk faded. He stepped back, muttering, This isn't over. Truth always drags shadows with it. And I'll be back. Then he turned and vanished into the dark of the alley, like he'd never been real at all. Grace was crying. I held her tighter, my chest aching. You're not a burden, I whispered. You're family. You've always been. David sank onto the porch steps. His face was grey, his breath shallow. I crouched beside him, gripping his hand. John, his voice was barely a rasp. I spent 50 years hiding. 50 years in fear. But if she's standing here, alive, free, then maybe it wasn't wasted. Don't say that, I said. My eyes burned. You'll see tomorrow. We'll sit at the bench again. We'll drink coffee again. He smiled, faint and broken. No, my tomorrow's done. But yours isn't. Take care of her. That's my last debt to you. My last gift. David. His hand squeezed mine once, then loosened. His eyes drifted shut, a soft smile on his lips. For 50 years he'd carried a secret. Now finally he let it go. I stayed there a long time, holding his still hand, listening to Grace sob quietly beside me. The world moved on, cars passing, voices carrying, a dog barking down the street. But for me, time stopped. Later that evening, Grace and I sat at my table. The same table where David and I had once shared tea. She called me uncle again. Just once. That was enough to fill the silence of 50 years. I thought about David's words. About debts and gifts. About the weight of family, and the way a single phone call can pull the past back into the present. I whispered to myself, maybe to him, maybe to the night people aren't debts. People aren't promises. People are the stories we refuse to let die. The radio hummed in the corner. The DJ's voice said softly, If you've been waiting to call someone, don't wait too long. I closed my notebook, wrote one last line for the day, Grace. Family. Tomorrow still belongs to us. And I said aloud, to no one and to everyone, if this story touched you, please subscribe and like this channel.